Hey everyone, I'm here to share a story with you today. I know many of you listen to these stories to unwind and fall asleep. So before we get started, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there? Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. This happened just under 2 years ago. At that time, I lived in a small 2-story townhouse and worked remotely from home. The place had a small kitchen and living room on the first floor and 2 bedrooms on the second floor. One of those rooms I used as my office. During this time, the unit that shared a wall with mine was vacant. No one had lived there or moved in for over 3 months. This night, I was working pretty late. It was rainy and cloudy outside, so I didn't have much else to do, and I decided to use the extra time to get ahead on work. I sat in the office on my laptop for a good few hours. The house was quiet as usual, with the soft sounds of rain outside tapping against the roof. I think it was just about 8:00 p.m. when, between the soft clicking of my keyboard, I heard a thump on the wall next to me. I looked over, a bit confused, and then I heard it again. This sound was coming from the shared wall with the vacant unit, so naturally, it was a bit odd. After a few seconds of thinking, I assumed it must have been the owner checking up on something, or maybe prepping the unit for a tour in the morning. Regardless, I continued working. Over the course of the next hour or so, I heard random sounds from the other unit, creaks, thumps, and various other similar sounds. Oddly, they were spread out. I'd hear one creak, and then several minutes would pass before I'd hear anything else. But then, at about 9:30, I heard a door suddenly creak open and then push closed. This was louder than all the other sounds I'd heard that night, which made me feel a bit uneasy. It had been months since I'd heard the sound of the other unit's door open and close, so I didn't actually know how loud or quiet it usually was. After a minute of hesitation, I decided to take a break and leave the office. I went downstairs just to make sure everything was okay with the other unit. I looked out the window next to the front door, hoping to see if the owner's car was parked outside, but I didn't see anything. There was nothing on the driveway or on the road. Also, while down there, I didn't hear a single noise from the other unit. I figured whoever it was must have already left. And so, I hoped the strange noises were done for the night. After checking the door and double-checking that it was locked, I went right back upstairs to my office. At this point, I wasn't sure how much longer I really wanted to work. I was feeling pretty tired and kind of just wanted to relax in bed for the rest of the night. But I told myself I'd push through for another 30 minutes. I closed the door to my office, sat down at my desk, and did as much work as I could in that half hour. I didn't notice any more of those sounds coming from the vacant unit, just the calm rain still trickling outside. Finally, feeling good about the work I'd gotten done, and noticing my eyelids getting heavy, I shut off my laptop and headed out of the office. I turned off the hallway lights and went into my bedroom. I started getting myself ready for bed when a sudden eerie and ominous sound echoed through the walls of the house. Someone was whistling a slow, soft tune. I stood there silently listening for a few moments, in shock of what I was hearing and how out of nowhere it came. I quietly walked up to my bedroom door and cracked it open. As soon as I did, I could hear it much more clearly. It felt like it was too loud to be from the other unit, or even from outside. Feeling really unsettled, I started walking down the hallway as the whistling continued, filling the quiet halls of the house with the eerie tune. I made my way down the steps and moved toward the back of the house, where I could clearly hear the sound coming from. I peered around the corner into the living room. In the dark, unlit room, a man was sitting in a chair, facing the other way toward the black TV screen, continuing to whistle as he stared into the pitch-black room and barely moved. I could only see the general outline of him, but his hand that was on the armrest looked like it was holding something, maybe a small handgun. I knew he had to have known I was inside and probably heard me sneaking downstairs, but he never looked back. He just stared forward, whistling. It was incredibly disturbing. I didn't know whether to say something or try to sneak away. Why was he even here? How did he get in? What did he want? My heart was racing faster and faster, and I made the sudden decision to run out of the house. I swung open the front door, still hearing the man continue whistling as I ran away. I only looked back once and didn't see him follow, but I did notice the door to the other unit was wide open. I got to the end of the road and called for help. When the police arrived, they could hear from outside the same eerie tune being whistled from inside. They approached carefully, going down to the living room, and found the man in the exact same position. They said he turned his head slightly to look at them, gave a short, crooked smile, and then dropped his gun, allowing them to arrest him. He didn't speak at all about what he was doing, why he was there, or what his plans were. Some of the officers I talked to thought he might have been trying to get arrested for some reason. But strangely, there's no information on the guy, no matching fingerprints, or any form of identification. And without him being cooperative, they had no way to find out who he really was, or if there was any mental illness behind it all. I don't know what could have happened that night, but even thinking about the possibilities makes me uneasy. Every once in a while, though, I still hear that same eerie tune being whistled in the middle of my dreams, making me wake up in a panic, thinking he could be back. Story 2 by Darian P. Asterisk. I live alone in a quiet, cozy neighborhood in a suburban town outside of a small city. I've been here for several years and never had any issues with it. Most of my neighbors are friendly, and it's a calm town where nothing much ever happens. I can just live my life in peace. This took place in the middle of spring. I'd gotten off work after a long 12-hour shift and was driving home in the dark around 9:00 p.m. The roads were empty and the neighborhood was dark, as most people had stayed inside because of the rain over the past several days. I pulled into my driveway and went inside, heated up some leftovers, and settled down on the couch to relax for the night. But about 10 minutes after I'd gotten home, there was a loud knock at the front door. It startled me, as I wasn't expecting anyone at this hour. I got up and saw a man standing on my porch. He was soaked, wearing a black rain jacket. I opened the door, and he asked if he could help. The man looked at me for a moment, his eyes droopy like he was really tired. His face was stiff and motionless. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with a dark beard and longish brown hair, all soaked by the rain. Finally, he spoke in a slow, emotionless tone, saying his dog had jumped the fence and asking if I had seen it. I said, "No, I haven't seen anything." He nodded, as if understanding, but his eyes wandered past me, looking into my house. He slowly turned away and walked off the porch. I closed the door, figuring he was just tired and frustrated, especially with everything happening at night and in the rain. I hoped he would find his dog soon, and I went back to the couch to forget about it. About 15 minutes later, I heard another knock at the front door. At first, I thought it was the same man. Why would he come back, though? I was confused and a bit concerned as well. I opened the door, and sure enough, it was the same man. This time, I wasn't as friendly. I just straight up asked him what he wanted. He had the same cold expression as before, and said that he had seen his dog run into my backyard, and asked if he could look around there. The way he said it felt strange, but I agreed to let him look around the back. I told him he could go ahead, and he said, "Thank you." But as I started to close the door, he stepped forward like he thought I was going to let him inside to guide him to the back door. I didn't want him inside, so I continued closing the door, unsure why he would even think I'd let him in when he could easily walk around to the back. I watched from inside to make sure he left. He walked around the side of the house, but something still felt off, so I went into the kitchen to watch him through the back door. I didn't keep my eye on him the whole time, but I kept checking to see what he was doing. Each time I looked, he was just walking around the perimeter of the yard. But then, one time I looked back, and his face was pressed against the glass, looking inside at me. It made me jump. I yelled at him through the glass, asking what he wanted. He called out, asking if his dog was inside the house. What the hell was wrong with him? I sternly said no, and clearly showed that I was getting impatient, but the man kept insisting. He wanted me to let him in so he could search my house for his dog. He banged on the door every time I wouldn't answer. His anger was growing, and it was becoming horrifying. I called the police. Once he saw me taking out my phone, he stopped banging on the door and left. That made me even more suspicious of what he was up to. The police arrived, and I gave a report about what happened and what he looked like. Unfortunately, there wasn't much they could do right then. A week later, a similar incident happened just like mine. It's unclear whether the man forced his way in or was allowed inside by the victims, the story was nearly identical to what had happened with me. The man came to their door asking about his dog, and it took a horrific turn. It makes me even more disturbed by that night. Had I listened to him or been any more willing to help, I could have ended up in the same dangerous situation as the others. Story 3 by Daniela A. I was 16 at the time, living in a small home with my parents on the outskirts of the city. The house was situated in a smaller, wooded neighborhood about an hour away from the main city area where both of my parents worked. This happened on a regular weekday. It had been cloudy and rainy all day, and everyone was talking about a big storm supposedly rolling in later that night. I didn't care much, as long as I didn't have to walk home in it. Thankfully, the rain held off until school ended and I got home. Usually, these storms are overhyped, but as I watched TV in the living room with the windows open, the clouds darkened and the rain got worse. What was truly unsettling, though, was the wind. Our small, old, wooden house creaked and swayed as the wind slammed against it and rain crashed against the roof. Despite all of this, I was confident everything was fine and just continued watching TV, waiting for my parents to get home. At around 5:30, my phone alarm suddenly blared, alerting me to a flash flood warning. Not too long after, my mom called. She said that a bunch of the roads on the way home were flooded and that it was too dangerous for them to drive in. They'd have to wait it out. I told her I was fine here, and the house seemed to be holding up, so it wasn't a big deal. Now that my parents were stuck in the city, I got up and found something to eat in the kitchen. While my meal was heating up in the microwave, I thought I heard something that sounded like a knock, maybe something knocking on wood. The noise was muffled by all the rain and wind, so I wasn't sure. I thought if it was anything, it was probably just something the wind was smacking against the house. So I ignored it. I grabbed my food and moved back over to the couch to watch TV. But before I could even start eating, I heard it again. This time, it freaked me out because it sounded like it was at the front door, which was pretty much right next to me. The knock was the same as the one I thought I heard when I was in the kitchen. Obviously, this made me think it had to be a person, but who would be outside in this storm? I was too scared for a minute to even check, so I just sat frozen on the couch, waiting for something to happen. When nothing did, I finally got up and went over to the door. I looked through the peephole. It was mostly fogged over, so all I could see were blurry shapes and the heavy rain pouring down. I stayed there for a while, making sure I didn't see anyone move or anything strange. But with no signs of anyone, I felt it was safe to open the door. At first, I was relieved no one was there, just the storm outside. But then, I noticed something odd in the mud leading up to the porch. There were footsteps. I couldn't make out any details, but it was clear from the repeating pattern in the mud that they were definitely footprints. Given the weather, they had to be recent, as they hadn't been washed away yet. A chill ran through my body as I abruptly closed the door. I was freaked out and had no idea what to do. The rational part of me wanted to call my parents, or even the police, because this was strange, especially with the massive storm going on and me being home alone. But the other part of me didn't want to worry anyone over something that could end up being nothing. I figured they must have already left since they weren't on the porch anymore. I stayed alert, but I refrained from calling anyone. I told myself that if I saw or heard anything else, I'd call. I went back to the couch, kept the TV volume a bit lower, and listened to the storm. Honestly, I don't remember much else from that part of the night, because at some point, I just passed out, waiting for my parents to get home. When I woke up, I wasn't sure why I had woken up, but the whole house was dark, and the storm was just as loud as before. I knew a while had passed, though, and I was curious as to why I'd been able to sleep so long without my parents coming home and waking me up. I picked up my phone and checked the time, but immediately noticed I had multiple missed calls and unopened texts from my parents. They were just asking if I was okay, and said the roads were still too bad to drive in, so they had to get a hotel for the night. I rubbed my eyes, trying to focus on the messages. But then I heard the most terrifying sound I could have possibly heard at that moment. It was a single footstep on the wooden floor directly above me. Not something hitting the house or the wind making the house creak. It was unmistakably a footstep inside the house, specifically in my bedroom, which was right above me. My heart started racing as I listened for another footstep. The footsteps slowly moved through my room and then started heading toward the door into the upstairs hallway. I knew I had to act fast. I turned my phone on silent and quietly ran into the small downstairs bathroom in the main hallway, keeping the lights off and carefully locking the door behind me. I don't think they heard me. I opened my phone and turned the brightness to the lowest setting as I dialed 911. It was pitch black in there, aside from the dim glow of my phone screen. Once I saw that the call timer had started, meaning an operator had answered, I whispered my name, address, and what was happening. Then, I went back to staying quiet, keeping the call going. I was too afraid to even turn the volume up on the phone to hear the operator, especially as I began hearing the footsteps moving down the stairs. The low thumps of the footsteps were interrupted by the sound of rain and wind. The footsteps walked right past the bathroom door, continuing until they reached the kitchen. A few seconds passed as I waited for the next step, but after several long minutes of agonizing silence, I suddenly heard a bang at the front door. Police called out, and I ran out of the bathroom and opened the door. It was apparent that the intruder was gone, as the house had gone completely silent. The sliding back door was cracked open, leaving eerie evidence of their departure. Likely, the sound of them breaking inside was drowned out by the storm, keeping me asleep. That might actually be the reason I'm still here today. Whoever the intruder was seemed to have only gone through the hallway and into my bedroom. Me staying asleep on the couch and not making any noise probably saved me. But what's truly disturbing to think about is that they were clearly looking for me. Even today, years later, I can't stop thinking about that night.